Has China's new Cold War frozen G20? And I have good reason to ask that question. Indeed, I am forced to ask that question. For the Chinese have started playing spoilsport at the G20 on an industrial scale. Chinese Premier Li Qiang, you know him, he has been deputed to be at the G20 summit in New Delhi instead of the Chinese President Xi Jinping, because the great leader could not be bothered to participate in one of the most important conferences in the world. Currently, Li is in Indonesia. There too, he is filling in for Xi Jinping at the ASEAN summit. ASEAN stands for Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and most of these nations today are unhappy with China. Why is that? Many reasons, one of which has been created deliberately by Beijing. The imperial map of China, where Beijing has behaved like a greedy child in a candy store, grabbing all that it can. Li said, and I'm quoting, "At present, it's very important to oppose taking sides, block confrontation, and a new Cold War." Was Li lecturing ASEAN? Absolutely. But from what place really? China professes it does not want a new Cold War, but simultaneously foments it. And G20 seems to be trapped between the hot war in Ukraine and the Cold War launched by China. These are the conflicts which will prevent agreement on a joint communique. Let me tell you a backstory. During a Sherpa-level engagement of the G20, China came up with a demand. It wants Beijing's One Belt, One Road project to be mentioned in the joint communique. The obvious question is, what has this road to debt trap anything to do with G20? If anything, OBOR, or China's road to destruction, is antithetic to G20's focus areas like sustainable development or anti-corruption. Corruption, you see, flows along China's Belt and Road. It inflates the cost of infrastructure projects in Malaysia, creates a corrupt elite along the CPEC, or the China-Pakistan economic corruption. But China insists that its One Belt, One Road travels well with the G20 theme, which, by the way, is one Earth, one family, one future. And India disagrees. You see, China is playing spoilsport. It says, if OBOR, cannot be a part of G20 communique, the summit's theme, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, should not be either. The Chinese logic is, one, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is supposedly not synonymous with one Earth, one family, one future. And number two, by using a Sanskrit phrase, India sets a precedent. One where the host country can include its language and culture in the communique. Taking it too far, isn't it? China's pointless stretch reeks of Beijing's desperate attempt to do all it can to freeze G20 as part of its new Cold War plan. First, China refused to attend G20 meetings in Arunachal Pradesh and Kashmir, and then weeks before the G20 summit, China released a provocative map. Beijing said Premier Li Qiang will be representing China in New Delhi. In other words, Xi Jinping will not be traveling. And why is that? No answer there. But that's where we come in. We tell you what those in positions of power do not. Did you know China has not sent an ambassador to India for 10 months? 10 months. That's how long the position has been empty. And this, mind you, is very, very unusual. No country claiming to be in a working relationship with a neighbor keeps an ambassador's position empty for so long. Those who have knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes say Beijing is in no hurry, which tells us that Xi Jinping's travel to New Delhi was never on the cards. Else, an ambassador would have been appointed first and dispatched to New Delhi to make the arrangements for Xi Jinping's visit. So why did the Chinese president decide to skip G20? To avoid uncomfortable engagements. Traveling to New Delhi in the middle of the standoff in Ladakh, or the map provocation is not the ideal place for Xi Jinping to be. And so he never planned to travel. Also, skipping G20 is not usual. It is one of the most important multilateral events in the calendar, by the way. And don't let anyone tell you that Xi Jinping's absence from the summit is a calendar issue, because it is not. You see, Xi Jinping had all the time to travel to the BRICS summit in South Africa. He had time for the Arab summit. He is not a leader who skips big engagements, just the uncomfortable ones, where he cannot be the prime focus or in a position to dictate terms and conditions, much like the G20 in India, a country where the summit will only return to after 20 long years. In all likelihood, Xi Jinping will not be China's president then. Also, it's not all roses and rainbows in China, of course. Reports say Xi Jinping has come under unprecedented attack from retired leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. Earlier this summer, there was a meeting at the seaside resort of Beidaihe. In fact, this meeting has been happening every year since Xi Jinping became the CCP Secretary General. But this year was unlike any other, and reports say senior leaders reprimanded Xi Jinping. In fact, these party elders had met in separately before heading to Beidaihe. And during that meeting, the leaders streamlined their agenda. And once there, they had a face-to-face meeting with Xi Jinping, where they told him that China cannot afford any more turmoil, political, economic, or social. And they said if the turmoil continues, the Communist Party will lose popularity in China. Xi Jinping was caught off guard by the criticism. The Chinese president later expressed his frustration to his closest aides. But has he done anything to put an end to the turmoil is the question. If anything, he is only rocking China's diplomatic boat harder, positioning China as an aggressive, unilateral and non-cooperative country. Today, China's foreign ministry told the world that Beijing stands, quote-unquote, ready to work with India to further improve and advance bilateral relations. But the truth could not be any more different. China has started a new Cold War, compartmentalized India as a rival, and decided to limit interaction as well as engagement. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the updates on the move.